First, I wanted to tell a little story. When I was in high school, I won a scholarship to go to Los Angeles and study with Ring Warner, who was, at the time, he was a player in the Chicago Symphony. Really big deal for me. And I, little old Dale from Casper, Wyoming, I got in my car. My dad let me take a car to Los Angeles, can you imagine? Anyway, I took this car, and my borrowed bass from Casper College, it was a Roth plywood bass, and went to Los Angeles. Well, on the way, I didn't want to spend any money that I had on a hotel room, for crying out loud. So I spent the night in the hills above Salt Lake City, and I froze. I mean, I froze. And so I got up really early, and I went down into Salt Lake City before even the Perkins was open. And about 5 o'clock in the morning, I found the string luthier, Peter Prier. And Peter Prier was, he was the string maker for the Utah Symphony, and really well known, known to be really a high quality luthier. Well, I just, you know, what did I know? I wanted to see his place. It was Saturday morning at 5 o'clock, but I found it. And I went up on the porch, and I remember there was a door, kind of a carved door, and beside it was a side light like you see in a door. And I was peering in that door, and all of a sudden the hair on the back of my neck went up, and the door opened, and there was a guy standing there. He said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm sorry, I'm Dale Bohren. I'm from Casper, Wyoming. I just have always wanted to see Peter Prier's shop, and I just was here early, and I was kind of blubbering on." And he said, "Oh, Dale, I'm Peter Prier." And he held out his hand, and he invited me into his shop, and he showed me around, and he asked me what I was doing, and of course, thought that was really cool. So he invited me to play one of the basses that he had. He had a little room, smaller than this studio, and it had 4 or 5 basses in it, and he said, "Well, try this one." And so he said, "Play your audition piece." And so I played my audition piece, which was Dittersdorf, and I played it on this bass, and he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "I can't believe the sound. It's so rich, and it comes out of the bass so easily." And he said that the bass was about $50,000. Anyway, long story short, before we were done, he spent maybe an hour with me, and he showed me his shop and showed me where he works. I couldn't have, I mean, it was like we were old friends or something. But anyway, he said, "Well, Dale, what are you playing on?" And I told him I had borrowed this Roth plywood bass that I was going to take to California and play on. And he said, "Well, those are pretty good student basses, but I have something you might be interested in." He said, "I just have one." And he told me that he had bought 6 basses. He had gone to Germany and had gone to the Pullman shop in Germany, where it's kind of a combination of machine and handcrafted basses, very nice basses, and he had bought 6 of them and had them shipped to him in Salt Lake. When they were unloading them off the dock in Los Angeles, these basses, the net came open somehow, and these basses fell out of the net and down onto the dock, and they were just shattered. And so they took a forklift and forklifted them off into the side of the warehouse, and by the time that Peter Prier's insurance company found these basses, they'd been sitting on the dock in all this moisture, and they were a real mess. They were really busted up. And so he bought these basses from the insurance company, took them back to Salt Lake City, and a couple years later, here I come. And he said, "Well, I was able to make 3 basses out of those 6. And so he said, "I have one. They're $2,500. At the time, you could buy a Volkswagen Bug for $2,500. But they're $2,500. I'll sell you a bass without a case, without strings, and without a bow for $2,500. And I thought, holy smoke, Peter Prier has an instrument for me. And I called my dad, and I said, "Dad," and he said, "Yes." And I said, "I met Peter Prier." And he said, "Yeah." I mean, like, he had no idea who Peter Prier was. So I told him that Peter Prier had this bass, and I told him the story, and he listened to me. But anyway, he said, "Dale, we can't afford $2,500 for a bass. It's just, we can't do that." So I said, "Okay, no problem." I got in my car and I drove to California. And when I got there was a message to call my dad. Now, you never met my dad, but I never got a message to call my dad. He didn't call. But I called him, and he said, "Well, you know, son, I got to thinking about it," and he said, "If you were a cab driver, I'd help you buy your first cab. And it looks to me like you're going to be playing the string bass a while. So I called Mr. Preer on the phone and made arrangements to buy that bass for you. And that is the bass I still play to this day. Just a beautiful piece of German, mostly handcrafted bass. It has a carved top out of spruce with such fine grain that I know violin players and makers look at it and they go, God, you could have made 4 violins. But they didn't. They made this string bass. And it's got a huge piece of ebony. It's just a very, very fine bass. And so every time I play it, of course, I think about my dad calling me and saying, well, if you were a cab driver. Anyway, so that's why I wanted to make this recording, was because I promised my dad I'd learn to play the string bass. So after all these years, I thought I'd better try to prove it anyway. So thanks for listening. Here we go. There you go, Dad.